Have you ever stopped to think about what money really is? We use it every day, but its story is one of the most fascinating and hidden tales in human history. It's not just about coins and paper. It's about power, trust, and the very foundation of our society. So, let's pull back the curtain and explore the secret history of money. Before money existed, people used barter. If you were a fisherman and needed bread, you'd have to find a baker who wanted fish. Simple, right? Well, not really. What if the baker didn't want fish that day? This problem is called the double coincidence of wants, and it made trade incredibly inefficient. Ancient societies needed a better way. The first step was commodity money. People started using items that everyone agreed had value. In ancient China, it was cowrie shells. In parts of Africa, salt was so valuable it was used as currency. The word salary even comes from the Latin word for salt, salarium, which was used to pay Roman soldiers. These weren't perfect solutions, but they were a huge leap forward. You no longer needed to find someone who wanted your specific goods. Then came the big revolution: metal. Around 3,000 years ago, people started using chunks of precious metals like gold and silver. Why? Because they were durable, divisible, and rare enough to be valuable. At first, they were just lumps of metal that had to be weighed for every transaction. Imagine going to the market with a set of scales. It was a bit cumbersome. This led to the invention of coinage. The first known coins were minted around 600 BC in Lydia, in modern-day Turkey. They were made from a natural alloy of gold and silver called electrum and were stamped with an emblem, usually a lion's head, to certify their weight and purity. This was a game changer. For the first time, you had a standardized government-guaranteed unit of value. This concept spread like wildfire across Greece, Persia, and the Roman Empire, creating vast trade networks and fueling the growth of empires. For centuries, the value of a coin was tied to the metal it contained. A gold coin was valuable because it was made of gold. But this system had a major limitation. The supply of precious metals was finite. As economies grew, they needed more money than they had gold or silver to mint. This is where the story takes another surprising turn. Enter paper money. The first true paper money appeared in China during the Tang dynasty in the 7th century. Merchants, tired of carrying heavy strings of coins for large transactions, started leaving their coins with a trusted person and carrying a paper receipt instead. These receipts began to circulate as a form of money. The government soon saw the potential and, during the Song dynasty, took over the system, issuing the world's first government-backed paper currency. When Marco Polo traveled to China in the 13th century, he was astonished. He wrote about how the Great Khan could essentially create wealth out of tree bark. Europeans were skeptical. To them, money had to have intrinsic value. It would take Europe several more centuries to fully embrace the idea of paper money. The transition began with goldsmiths in 17th century London. People would deposit their gold with a goldsmith for safekeeping and receive a paper receipt. Soon, people realized it was easier to trade the receipts directly rather than constantly going back to the goldsmith to get their gold. These receipts were the ancestors of modern banknotes. But here's the secret trick the goldsmiths discovered, something that would shape modern banking. They noticed that only a small fraction of depositors ever came to claim their gold at the same time. So they started issuing more receipts, more paper money, than the gold they actually held in their vaults. They would lend these extra receipts out and charge interest. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking, the system our banks still use today. It's a system built almost entirely on trust. For a long time, paper money was still backed by a promise. You could, in theory, take your banknote to a bank and exchange it for a fixed amount of gold or silver. This was known as the gold standard. It provided stability but also restricted a government's ability to manage its economy, especially during crises like wars or recessions. The final, and perhaps most radical, chapter in the history of money happened in 1971. US President Richard Nixon announced that the US dollar would no longer be convertible to gold. This event, known as the Nixon shock, effectively ended the gold standard for the entire world. Since then, we've been living in the age of fiat money. The word fiat comes from Latin and means let it be done. Our money, the dollars, euros and yen in our pockets, has value simply because the government declares it does, and because we, the people, collectively agree to accept it as a medium of exchange. Its value isn't backed by a physical commodity. It's backed by trust in the stability of the government and the economy. Think about that for a second. The vast majority of money in the world today isn't even physical cash. It's just digital entries in computer systems, ones and zeros flashing between banks. When you use your credit card or a payment app, no physical money changes hands. It's a purely abstract transfer of value, a testament to how far we've come from bartering fish for bread. So, what does the future hold? We're already in the midst of another monetary revolution with the rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. These are decentralized digital currencies not controlled by any government or bank. They represent a return to the idea of money as a scarce commodity, but in a digital form, secured by cryptography. Will they become the money of the future, or are they just a fleeting experiment? History is still being written. The story of money is the story of human innovation, trust, and power. From cowrie shells to digital code, it has constantly evolved. It's a system we created, a collective belief that allows billions of people to cooperate and trade on a global scale. It's not just a tool for buying things. It's one of the most powerful social technologies ever invented. Understanding its hidden history gives us a new perspective on the world we live in today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden stories that shape our world. See you next time.